What's happening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another video. And this time we're going to be looking at something quite controversial. If you know anything about dog training, you know that dog trainers hate retractable leashes. So we're going to look at the pros and cons in this video of possibly one of the most popular leads on the market. The retractable lead was invented by a German man named Manfred Bogdan in 1972, who's actually the founder of a company called Flexi. Now, this is one of those occasions when a company holds such a massive monopoly over the industry that people start referring to the equipment by the brand name instead of the actual name of the piece of kit, like Hoover instead of vacuum cleaner or Coke instead of cola. Now, full disclosure, I did reach out to Flexi to get some samples to test because, well, YouTube certainly doesn't pay me enough to smash retractable leashes up. However, they couldn't reel me in, so I retracted my offer. That's my way of saying the video isn't sponsored or anything like that. Type retractable lead into Google and you'll get horror story after horror story about how they can get misused and accidents including burns, amputations and even death of dogs that have occurred in the past. And let's be honest, the results are hardly surprising. The corded version looks like it's been made out of some kind of bloody cheese wire. If the dog does a runner, then instinct can make you grab hold of the line and boom, you've got a very nasty burn on your hands. And straight after you have shredded your hand, you can bet that you'll be dropping that lead. Now you've got a piece of equipment chasing a dog. And if your dog is on the nervous side, it may cause a panic response in the dog, who's going to ignore any cues or commands from you and tear off at its fastest pace possible. Another reason that they're hated is because you only have to walk through town to spot a dog on a curb 20 foot in front of its owner, on a pavement that's only 3 foot wide. And it doesn't take a mathematician to work out that if the dog takes a few paces to the left, then car maybe meets dog. So don't be that person. Finally, if the dog gets enough speed up to get to the end of the line, say 30 foot, depending on which one you buy, flat collar, choke chain, prong collar, head halter, it doesn't really matter because it is possible to cause serious damage. So for the main part, if you're going to use it, probably use it on a harness, or at least use it properly. But if this is such a common sense thing, then why aren't these banned? Well, all of the above are screw-ups on part of the person holding the other end of the lead. If they were taught how to use them to their benefit, then maybe we would be reducing the amount of screw-ups made. I can tell you now, the dog trainers out there are shouting at me about how long line is the perfect alternative. Well, most dog trainers do prefer the use of something called a long line. And this is basically a 30-foot lead. So why is this considered a better option? One main concern about the retractable lead is if the locking mechanism breaks, then you'll have no control over the line. But I've had 2 long lines snap on me. Admittedly, one was with an enormous bull mastiff and the other a very strong Malinois, namely Fizz, my one. It's rare that you see trainers actually teaching people how to handle the long lines, and there is some skill involved. I suppose for the plus side, they are a bit of a pain in the arse, so clients are less likely to walk their dog next to the road using them. But it ain't all hunky-dory. There'll be lots of dog trainers out there, now back me up in the comments if you know of any clients, yours or otherwise, that have had long line birds. Most of us have had one before. Or if you've seen an owner faceplant after wrapping the line around their hand and watching the dog at full tilt. Or seen another dog's leg get wrapped up during a social interaction. Long lines are far from perfect in my humble opinion. Now, in many cases, I recommend that in the right place, you actually allow the long line to trail along the floor. So you can use your body weight to slow the line down. That slows the dog rather than it hitting the end. But this still takes practice. And if the dog is moving at speed and you weigh as much as Joe does, then you're going to lose. But that stands true for both long lines and retractables. They move off too fast with this and you're letting it go. Not to leave you with a little controversy, there is the odd occasion when using a retractable can be useful. And here's when I consider using them. Firstly, during socialisation for puppies. Now, I'm not talking about social interactions as much because I'm going to do that in a safe environment without a lead at all. But sometimes having a pup on a retractable and allowing them to move forward or away from something that they want to investigate can be really beneficial while you still maintain an element of control. Long lines are often too heavy for puppies and they take a bit of handling. Letting your dog interact with another dog while on a Flexi is a terrible idea. Let me just put that out there. But the potential for tangle, which could lead to a fight, is just not worth the risk. There are horror stories I've heard of dogs being strangled after a tangle and freak accidents. That means using the lead to walk the dog to the dog park and then using it as a management tool is a really crappy idea. Now, scent work, these can come in really handy. If you're looking at proof indications, with you plotting up in one spot to reduce the amount of body language that's being given out, can help build distance from the dog. Recall training can be carried out successfully on this if taught properly. I used to recommend training your dog to come back and extending the amount of freedom they get after every few successful reps. So starting at 5 foot, then 10 foot, then 15 and building it up from there. Tracking, not a common tool used for tracking, but if you're doing it for fun in an urban environment, then it can be used effectively without having to do all the line handling stuff. Loose lead walking. Whoa, I know, the tension, opposition reflex. Customers are using these things. You want them to walk down the road with a fixed length lead, but they are usually getting tugged down a road. Why not teach them to use these properly? When I'm walking my dogs on a lead, I use a 6 foot lead, but I hate to say it, these things can be used properly. One of my favourite exercises for punters to practice is classically conditioning the lock going on or off. In fact, applying the locking function is an exercise I teach to many aggressive dogs, but on a normal lead. Leash tension is usually a trigger for the dog to kick off because the owner has inadvertently taught it as a predictor of another dog. When the owner spots whatever it is that makes the dog freak out, their natural reaction is to tense up. The owner's natural reaction is to tense up, which in turn applies pressure to the lead, which then leads to the dog going batshit crazy. My job is to counter condition that to be a cue for eye contact. Pressure, food, pressure, food, pressure, food. Eventually you apply a little pressure, the dog looks at you anticipating good stuff, you mark and reward. It's the same with a retractable, except you use the lock instead of applying pressure. Hit the lock, food. Hit the lock, food. Hit the lock, food. There's a reverse of this as well. Some dogs know when the lock is applied and tend to aim for 200 miles per hour the second that lock comes off. The combat for this is to walk about with the lock applied. When you unlock the lead, you give them a release cue like free and drop a handful of treats on the deck next to your feet. Bosh. Little bit of practice and you've got a dog that learns to hang about for a bit. Now, I know I've been sounding like a fanboy of the Flexi, but they really come up with their pros and cons. It's not just right or wrong. If I could have any sway, I'd like to see a newer version with a slowing brake on it. So you could slow the speed of the dog to a stop rather than just crashing into a brick wall. Finally, you see, we manage a couple of our dogs on Flexis, the most notable being Khaleesi and Archie. And for those of you that don't know, we picked up Khaleesi, who's a little star outside a cafe, where she was left with previous broken bones. It seems like it was possibly that she'd been beaten when she was a pup and left with a broken and dislocated shoulder and a broken back leg at the hock. She's never going to fully recover from that and needs to have her exercise reduced to something that her body can actually manage. Now, being a Malinois, she likes to tear off at the speed of light, and we've been informed that she will eventually need to fuse her bones, which will dramatically reduce her quality of life. We can possibly prevent that by finding the right balance of mental and physical stimulation versus not knackering her body out. And this bit of kit allows me to do that. That means a lot of scent work and managing her arousal levels when we first go out. She can handle plodding out with the others if we force her to stay on the lead for the first 5 to 10 minutes. this is super important because, as David Eagleman explains in his book, The Brain, everything that you've experienced forms who you are. More specifically, experience trigger reactions in your brain, and this leaves a lasting mark on your personality. This in turn shapes your brain's perception of the world. But nothing is fixed. You can restructure your brain. And that applies to our dogs as well. We don't let them practice the wrong behaviours. Now, if I continue to allow Khaleesi to practice this unwanted behaviour, we can be almost certain that she's going to get better at it and that she'll do herself some damage. So I want to build up a new behaviour around her start instead of just grilling her for doing what she's always done. Now, before you go out and buy one of these things, you need to check if they're even legal in your neck of the woods. Because if the regulations are on a certain length of leads, then you can't use them legally. But I suppose that also throws long lines out the window too. If you love a retractable or you've enjoyed the video, then drop me a thumbs up. If you hate retractable still, or you think this is the worst video on YouTube, then leave a thumbs down. Question of the day. If I gave you the exercises, would you run a retractable workshop for your clients? Or would you attend one if a trainer near you put one on? Listen, I'll catch you next time, people. Oh, and you should really check out that video up there. And if you haven't subscribed, well, it would be appreciated. Adios. And this is one of those occasions when blah 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 shumataba.